We are in a time of tremendous change, in case you hadn't noticed. And I'm reminded of this from time to time in many different ways. So we had this amazing dinner on Friday night, our volunteer appreciation dinner. And for those that were here, you know it was magnificent because we have a magnificent community. And for those that weren't, make sure you come to the next one. So, as it was fun and it was delightful, and it was just an opportunity to say thank you to all the people, because what I say Sunday after Sunday is it takes many hands and many hearts to come together in community to provide this place and all that we do. And so it was really fun just to take that moment to celebrate and remember who we are. So I just again want to express my profound gratitude to each of you for your gifts that you bring to this community. And so one of the things that I discovered in ministry, I just saw, these little Facebook posts come by, and every once in a while I just kind of get a good chuckle. And somebody put this thing up that said, so going to seminary is like going to culinary school. You learn the fundamentals, and you know how to produce dishes, and you come up with some masterpieces, and it's really lovely. Ministry is actually like being on Chopped every single day with random ingredients, which you never know what they're going to be, and eventually something's going to explode or burn up. And I thought, yeah, that sounds familiar. So what I didn't know when I signed up for ministry, I thought I'd be all theological teaching and all stuff, but it turns out you get to do a lot of stuff. And so you get to learn about technology, and you get to learn about all that. So last week was catering week, because I threw a little something together for dinner, and then this week is technology week. And so I've been working with this wonderful young man. We're getting a phone system that actually works, and I can make phone calls from my office. Yay. So excited, Doesn't take much to get me excited. But so this young man's here, and we're talking about this, and we're sharing with him kind of our overall plan for where we're going. And so I showed him the sound booth and all of our equipment. And I said, so our church is really proud of the fact that we've been on Access 21 for 25 years. Now, he's a young guy, late 20s, I would guess, got a 2-year-old son at home. And he looked at me with that not knowing look that young people often give to you, like, what's that? So I said, well, back in the day, there was this new invention called cable TV, and part of that was cable access. He was like, oh, I've never heard of that. I'm not trying to make anybody feel old in the room, I'm just saying. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? So then I have our sweet little Ashley, who's doing a lot of our social media stuff with us, who's probably under 25, so you'll recognize her right away if she comes. And so she's working on a bunch of different things with me. But I had this, some of you have seen this chart that I do about going from vision to fulfillment and the stages and steps. So she's kind of doing a redesign on it. And so we've been life continues to change around us. And it's fun, and it's exciting, and it's wonderful to keep getting to evolve. Life changes for us as human beings. And as I said, one of the things that so often I find in the spiritual journey is that we sometimes try and hold on to what was. And what I've discovered in life, that some of the things that worked for me in the past are no longer working. I'm not just talking physically, I'm talking, that my approach to living sometimes needs to evolve. And I need to be clear about where I am and who I am. And so we're looking today and starting this series on the meditations of the Spirit. Today, looking at this idea of listening. Helen Keller said to us, the best and most beautiful things cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. So her was a person who had no physical vision, but had tremendous vision of the heart. Something else opened up for her. I was struck by this idea of Nepo speaking of this idea of listening, or how the loss of something sometimes creates the opening for something new. For those who've experienced hearing loss, I loved his description. Goes on the edges first. Things don't sound quite as crisp or as clear. And then you go through a process. But what he was saying to us is that's also opened up something inwardly. That I'm needing to listen to something deeper. And so this wonderful process we call aging, I believe this whole process of life is this journey. And what we want to do is keep practicing being present with what is. You see, we have a culture that's a little bit youth obsessed. And so sometimes we want to judge ourselves by the outer appearance of things rather than the inner. The gift of spirituality, I believe, the gift of these teachings are that we realize that, as we say all the time, we are spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings given the opportunity to express in human form. And so that part of us, that spiritual essence that takes on a body and gets to experience the fullness of life as we know it on this dimension through that body, it's a wonderful and beautiful thing. We are all attracted and love little babies because they just shine their innocence. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to prove anything. They're just like, you can love me now. I'm here, right? And yet, as we are growing and evolving, we're learning how to take that original innocence and bring it into form. And so we have been gifted with an intelligence as a wisdom. So there's a part of us that is spiritual in nature that knows our true origin, that knows where we come from. And then there's a part of us that develops, sometimes it's called the ego mind, there's a lot of different terms of it, that is necessary for us. It's important for us, but it also can become a form of limitation. In Course in Miracles, it speaks of the idea of the ego versus spirit. The ego mind being that part that believes in separation. That part of us that thinks it's in charge of our life. Don't know if anybody has one of those. And then there's the spiritual self. And he said, so we're always operating, in the Course in Miracles terms, is we're always operating either from a place of love or a place of fear. You see, when we believe in separation, it's easy to be fearful. It's easy to think that somehow our good, whatever our good is separate from us, and that somehow it could be taken away. So one of the fears that we have are because if we're operating on fear, then we need to protect ourselves. We need to hold on to things. We need to be in this bubble because we can't trust life. But the spiritual part of us knows there's something greater. So we have, another way I like to look at it is this idea of the conditioned mind. If there's the divine mind, and then there is the conditioned mind. So that mind, where we speak of the one mind common to all, as Emerson said, is available to us. And when we're in our spiritual practice, when we're in our spiritual awareness, we're aware of a larger something. When we can move away from the realm of experience into the inner dimension, into the inner terrain, we're aware of an expansive life that loves and delights in its self-expression. And this is the consciousness through which the great teachers from the ages have spoken. Jesus spoke of it as this kingdom of heaven. And he said, in my Father's house, in this universal mind, there are many rooms. There are many dimensions. Mansion and dimension have the same root. There are many realms. And so I go to a place to prepare for you. So as we talk about Jesus, we talk about him in that context of the great example of possibility for humans. We don't see him as fundamentally separate, but rather as the great example for who we might become if we would enter into that same dimension of understanding. But there's also this part of us that we might refer to as the conditioned mind. And the conditioned mind is very important to us. The conditioned mind is that part of us that starts really early. We get this body, and all of a sudden you got these big giant people, and they're trying to teach you wonderful things. And they're trying to teach you how to walk, and how to say words, and how to eat your peas, and all of these other wonderful things that we're learning as we grow up. They're also inadvertently or advertently teaching us how life works. And so we begin to learn how life works. Now, when we're young, we don't really have necessarily the capacity to really question. So we accept, why would those people that taught me how to eat my peas tell me something untrue about money? Right? They had great advice on peas. Money advice must be good. But so not only are we learning skills and we're learning how to do things, and we have this beautiful, amazing subconscious mind that takes new information and stores it, and it becomes habitual, which is great. We say, how great is that? I mean, I know it takes me a while to get ready in the morning anyways, but if I had to relearn to tie my shoes, relearn to brush my teeth, relearn all of those basic things that we learned as children, that's all. Subconscious mind's like, I got this. You can talk on the phone now while you're getting dressed and ask questions like, what did I do with my phone? Or like me, usually with glasses on my head, where are my glasses, right? You know, you can do other things because that's stored in our subconscious mind. But it's stored also as these belief systems, and these belief systems then are how we interact with life, whether they're true or not true. Isn't that wonderful? Well, the debate's not in on that yet, is it? It's wonderful in some things if it's working for you. But then sometimes we refer to those negative beliefs or those limiting beliefs. So if our parents or those who cared for us lived in a place of scarcity and place of lack and taught us things about how there's never enough, and that, you know, all of the stories that go, we may have stored those as well. And if we believe those, then we operate the same way because it's what we believe. Notice this, that if I believe something, I don't act completely differently. Right? I don't believe I can fly and then, walk. I don't believe something. I always am operating my life according to my current understanding, my current belief system. Now then, because the universe is amazing, it will partner you at some point with someone who you will fall absolutely in love with, and may even decide you'll spend the rest of your life with them and move in together, and one day you, lo and behold, you discover they got a different belief. Was I the only one? Tell me I'm not the only one that, right? They're operating at a different level about money or about this or about that, right? And then we go, well, how could you believe that? Well, because they had a life experience that led that to them. Here's the good news. Here's the really good news, is beliefs are not fixed. They are not forever. And herein lies the power of unity principles, of new thought principles, of conscious work, is it says not only you're not a victim of your belief, but actually we might go so far as to say you can direct your belief. You can begin to change your belief system. If you are willing to do the work, and it does take work. I always say we call it spiritual practice because it does imply more than once. It's nice to have an affirmation and say it once, but for most of us, we got to say it every day, over and over, until it actually becomes the way. So there's this part of us that says, okay, I'm affirming this thing, the little voice in the back of our head, the little ego mind says, what makes you think you could? What makes you think, da-da, so that little negative voice sometimes we want to get rid of it, but we shouldn't. We should listen to it because it is the voice of our limiting belief. And here's the other thing I want us to know. Why we can be compassionate towards ourselves is this is a good thing. You see, if we were completely unfiltered, and we had to go through life every single day with just an unfiltered bombardment of information, our little brain cells would just go push, push, push. So part of our development is by developing this belief system, it filters out unlike. This fits what I believe. This is not what I believe. This is what I want. This is what I don't. Right? And it's doing all of this wonderful stuff. We always talk about that wonderful experiment. You can practice this, that if I say, yellow Mustang. Now, you may not have thought about yellow Mustangs before today. I'm talking about the car, not the horse. You can use either. More likely you'll see a car. But if you leave here today, my guess is sometime before the day's through, you're going to see a yellow Mustang. If not today, well, you're slow. But don't judge yourself. I'm kidding. Gee. No, right? All of a sudden, because we placed our attention, now it becomes into our awareness. So these are the laws of mind that says where we place our attention is what we can then begin to attract to us. But having the attention is not enough. It is understanding that we must have a belief in place that makes that welcome. So, again, this fun work of examining and releasing limiting beliefs and continuing to accept new beliefs that are supportive, or beliefs that we always had that have supported us, we're kind of in this idea of, wow, look at this. I can actually begin to control my experience by what I let into my mind, what I choose to believe, what I choose to experience. And so when we are talking about listening, this practice of meditation, of being still. You see, I always sort of think of our spiritual practice in terms of meditation and prayer. And I'm speaking of affirmative prayer here. Affirmative prayer is declaring the reality as already established. So meditation is the listening. It's the in-breath. It's the learning that behind that monkey mind, that chattery mind, some of us have really chattery minds that all day long. Behind that, there's this calm, divine mind. And meditation allows us to slow down and enter into that space, as Deepak Chopra calls it, the space between the gaps, or the gap between the thoughts. Entering into that gap where there is nothingness and everythingness. And when we can learn to do that, we've taken the in-breath, now we're speaking the out-breath, and we're declaring our reality. And so we can say without abandon, I am abundant. All of my good comes to me in perfect timing and in divine right order. I am whole. I am healthy. I am a joyous expression of the divine. I allow my life to grow and to unfold and to be beautiful. And it's not coming from a place of like I'm trying to overcome God, but coming from a recognition of the nature of the divine and allowing that to be expressed more fully. So we're in this in-breath and out-breath. But unless we're willing to do the practicing, the listening, then we can approach this from that conditioned mind. And that conditioned mind says prayers like, well, Reverend Marty said, I have to say it this way. I know God is my source. I don't think it's really going to happen. And all of my good is available, but that's never happened before. And I joyfully accept it now. Right? I'm not just speaking to myself here, am I? Because there's way too much disclosure if I am. But right? If we're trying to, see, one of the things people want to go into affirmative prayer, let's get to affirmative prayer. And I'm like, let's get still. Because in my journey, there is a place where we understand that we get to be powerful co-creators with the divine, but then there's also a place when we must surrender that and open to the larger expression. And so listening becomes more important. I'm talking spiritual listening. Being available. Making ourselves realize at a deep and profound level that it is the universe, the Father's good pleasure to provide all of our good. If we're operating from a belief that somehow the divine, God, would withhold our good, then we are operating from an idea that we have to overcome that. But when we understand truly that life really only wants to fulfill itself, and we see that in all creation, then that same life that created everything wants to fulfill itself through us. And so we can open to the greater possibility. We can allow that something to happen. And it doesn't happen always instantly. So we're listening to Spirit, and what we're listening for is wisdom and guidance and clarity. And so sometimes you're sitting in prayer or in meditation, minding your own business, and God says some ridiculous thing like, you should check out Unity of Charlotte. No, what are you doing in my meditation? I'm here in a space of peace, right? But what I've learned is that the listening is nothing unless we're willing to act upon what we hear, right? And so from the intuitive side, things don't always make logical sense. But I have learned that when I trust that divine guidance, it always guides me in the right direction. And what we're asked to do is to take the next step. The next indicated step, as my friend Kathy Hearn says. Take that and see where it takes you. And take that and see where it takes you. And then, amazingly, things that we could not imagine come together in ways that we would have never designed. But we know that there's a wisdom and intelligence that is greater than I am at work. So we're listening for that clarity, for that guidance, for that wisdom. And then we're having the patience, as it says in the Bible, to wait upon the Lord. Now we know metaphysically, often the word Lord is understood as the law. So to wait upon the law to fulfill itself, that sometimes there is a time between the planting and the harvesting. Sometimes there's a period between the planting and any signs of life. And so what we must learn to do is not diminish what we have created before it has a chance to begin to grow. So this idea to wait upon the Lord is to refine our consciousness. Once we know who we are and what we are, I often think of prayer as seeds, that we're planting divine seeds, and then we're cultivating, because that's a part of gardening, it turns out. You can not only plant, but you have to water, and you have to weed, and you have to do those things so that we cultivate the garden. And some plants we know come up quickly. Some take a little more time. But the law of life is perfect for the seed that it has grown. I was talking with a friend recently about work that she had done some time ago, and it felt like nothing was happening, nothing was happening, nothing was happening, nothing was happening. And then all of a sudden, after 4 different events that made no sense at the time, that seemed to change and up-level or upheaval her life, boom, it happened over here. And so it was easy to go back and go, remember how we were planting. And so those things, those changes in circumstances needed to go into place so that you are now in the receptive environment for the good that you desire to come forward. So in the Bible, it says to us, and I think this was perhaps this idea what Isaiah was talking, they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. And they shall walk and not faint. You see, if we are willing to be in the practice, to continue to listen, to rejuvenate, to allow ourselves to be still, there comes a time when we wait upon the Lord, and then we can rise above the condition. We can run. We can walk without fainting. So it's a wonderful passage to remember. Isaiah 40:33, if you want to open your Bible to look at it. Oh, wrong crowd. Sorry. I always wanted to do that. Right? So my friends, I think my encouragement, I think our idea that seems to be unfolding this month is about that willingness to be in the I am. I am one with the I am. And to be willing to listen. Next week, Reverend Sally will speak to remember, a whole series of just being in the presence, in the consciousness. I know there's a part of us that wants to hit the microwave and have dinner ready 1 minute later. But consciousness, it turns out, takes time. It takes sincere practice. It takes being willing to re-examine the walls that we have created for ourselves. To say, is this wall real, or is this something that I have built? And if I have built it, the good news is I can break through it. How good is that? So let us stop and listen. Let us pray together. As we simply open our hearts and our minds to this divine presence, to remember the truth of who we are, to recognize and know that this one life does indeed delight in its self-expression. And we come together in spiritual community this day into this holy and sacred space in the recognition that there is but one life, one power, one presence, one being, we call it God. And that she is expressing in, through, and as all of creation. And so we open our hearts to divine love, our minds to infinite wisdom, and the very portal of our soul to remember who we truly are. We speak the word of truth this day as we are knowing, not just intellectually, but at a heartfelt and soul-felt level, that we are holy beings in this instant, that we are one with the divine and therefore one with that which we desire. We are allowing greater good to reveal itself through us, to make itself known. We know it's already our inheritance to experience the fullness of abundance, joyously giving, joyously receiving of the divine bounty. We know it is our divine inheritance to experience wholeness and health and well-being and vitality. We are knowing that there is only one presence, and that presence is love, that there is nothing to fear but only love to be revealed. And so we easily forgive that which is unforgiven. We release that which no longer serves us, to stand in the presence of divine love as its ambassador in the world. How grateful I am for this truth, How grateful I am to speak this for all of us. And so it is with joy and gratitude that I'm simply knowing that all of these words we have spoken go forth to bless us and to be a blessing. We take a moment to bless this spiritual community, this divine idea called Unity of Charlotte. We extend that blessing to all of our brothers and sisters around the planet. We're holding a high vision for a planet at peace, for a world that works for all. And as always, we bless all priests and rabbis and ministers and teachers of all faiths, for we know there are many pathways to the divine. We honor them all. It is with a profound sense of gratitude that I'm simply giving thanks. And I know that the living Christ moves through the words spoken here to be a blessing to all, and so I joyously and thankfully let go, allowing it to be. As together we say, and so it is. Amen.